Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Mike Harris, and who knows which direction the conversation will go in, but we're going to start with the policy failure in Mexico, illegal immigration. And Mike, I've got this article link that you've done for Veterans Today. And you start out by saying, to simply state that the U.S. relationship with Mexico is terribly flawed is a gross understatement. The relationship with Mexico has been highly dysfunctional and runs contrary to the dictates of the U.S. Constitution. The question remains is what to do about this broken relationship and the broken borders. And this is of special interest to me because I've been asked by the sheriff of Cochise County to help bring awareness to the sheriff situation here, and what's happening here? What is going on? It's more than just a broken system. We've got the fact, and this is being supposedly investigated by Congress right now, that the BATF here in the United States is supplying Mexican drug cartels with arms. This is, and we've got reports of helicopters bearing Mexican troops coming into the U.S., and we're turning our head to the. I mean, it seems to me that there were no Iraqis or no Afghanis massed on our borders and invaded the United States. I would say the situation in the borders is more serious than anything else that's going on right now. Your opinion, please, sir.
Well, I agree 100% that the situation on our southern border is the most serious security threat that is faced by the country today. You look at the sheer numbers. I know the official numbers say we only have 12 million illegal aliens in the country, but if you read the literature out there that Goldman Sachs publishes, we have closer to 35 million illegal aliens in this country. And we have a ongoing and rampant drug business that's run across that border on a daily, nightly basis. And the powers that be seem powerless to do anything to stop it. And I don't know why that is. We've got, allegedly the finest military in the world, and we don't deploy them to fortify and defend our borders. Defies logic.
Well, we do, put them out there to protect the opium poppy fields in Afghanistan.
Now you're beginning to get it.
Those nasty old Taliban, and I have a book out called Mystery Babylon, The New World Order Unveiled. And 25 years ago, I got information that the CIA was using the special forces to build radio towers to guide planes into Albrook Air Force Base in Panama. From there, the cargo, according to Colonel Edward Picatolo, was cocaine. And they were met in Panama by the Mossad, Michael Harari, who Veterans Today has unveiled to be active right now in Libya, working for the Mossad. So what I see here is our governments, our secret services, the covert operations are in charge of the drug business. They're sending and allowing these illegals to bring the drugs up here. The answer to the problem really is to take all the laws against victimless crimes off the books. Let people have drugs if they want. Let them grow pot in the backyard if they want to. Let them grow coca leaves up coca trees up in Aspen. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that picture? Instead of our government bringing this in, funding and arming the cartels, and arresting Americans after they've purchased the end product.
Well, Clay, you've mentioned about 10 different facets of the nature of this problem in one sentence. So, it is a complex set of issues. And, first of all, let's go back in time and remember when Reagan had the Iran-Contra scandal and what was going on with that. If you look at it, Ollie North, as you remember, Iran-Contra was all about providing weapons to Iran and supplying weapons to the Contra forces in El Salvador. The U.S. Congress told Reagan, no, we're not going to fund those actions in El Salvador. Well, Reagan, being the guy that he was, did not want to take no for an answer. So he found a workaround to provide the funding and the weapons required by the Contra forces. He did this by smuggling cocaine into the U.S. and selling it in the U.S. inner cities, and creating what became known as the crack cocaine epidemic. And that was a direct result, of Reagan's efforts and through Ollie North. Now, I can't say right or wrong, but it doesn't seem right to me where you have a government providing an illegal substance to our own citizens, which generates the crime and the problems and the social destruction that goes with it. Doesn't seem right to me. So that's what's going on here. But that generated a huge revenue stream that was unaccountable and unsupervised by Congress. And that was all run by, covert operatives within our own government. That's what they did. And this is well documented. You can go pull up the congressional hearings on this. You can watch it on YouTube. It's there. This is what our government did. And this is what our government continues to do today. Our government, the CIA in particular, controls the drug trade globally. And this is generating hundreds of billions of dollars in money that has no oversight and has no checks, no balances, there's no brakes on it all. They can do anything they want, and they are, with a lot of money. And that's really the long and the short of what's going on here. We talk about our war on terror and how we have to, yesterday was the anniversary of 9/11, which was really the beginning of a lot of the police states that's happening in this country. And we fought two wars. In Afghanistan, one, we mentioned the opium fields which are generating hundreds of billions of dollars in the opium trade. We have a war in Iraq where there were never any weapons of mass destruction. We haven't found them yet, still not out there. But we've been lied to. And all this is done in an effort to avoid congressional oversight and to have access to an unlimited supply of money. And that's what this is about. And that's why our border is open to this day. And in addition to the border problem with the drug problem, we have these illegal aliens coming up here. Another nasty, nasty problem that we as American citizens have to live with. Completely degrading our quality of life in this country.
These, I've made the statement, if I lived in Acapulco and I couldn't get a job to feed my family, I might be walking up there with them.
Well,
but they're being driven. They're being driven up here. They're being sent up here, and then I've had Border Patrol agents, Mike, tell me, right here on the border, we can stop it. We can stop them. Their superiors won't let us, and that's exactly what Obama has done now by saying, if they haven't committed a crime, well, they committed a crime walking across the border, but that's still in the courts fighting here in Arizona. Federal government suing Arizona for trying to enforce a federal law. How insane is that?
Well, Clay, here's the long and the short of it. Our government, through the actions of certain intelligence agencies, if you will, is losing its legitimacy. And the choices we're given in our elections, we've got a presidential election coming up, so we've got bad choice A or bad choice B. We don't have any really genuine choices that reflect what is in the national best interest of the United States. Every candidate we have on both sides.
If you tried to do that, Mike, they'd call you a Nazi. They'd call you a Nazi.
Well, I've been called a lot worse than a Nazi. It doesn't scare me much. I am not a politically correct kind of guy. And you know what? They can call me names all day long, and it really doesn't bother me. What does bother me is the fact that people are sitting back and we're letting our country be taken from us by these nefarious dark forces within our own government, and we have to put a stop to it. And I'm not quite sure how to do it yet.
Well,
that's legitimacy.
That's exactly what I've written about here and been talking about for 20 years. I mean, I saw it happening with what happened at Waco. I said, my God, this ain't China, is it? Well, it's the same type of government. What do you call it, communist or fascist, whatever? It's totalitarianism. It's one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, and for the banksters. And it's the banks that make out because they finance both sides of every war. And then they finance the companies that go in and rebuild the stuff that we blew up with all of, and how much money did we spend on fuel? Well, let's see, I think it's in something like the trillions of dollars for the last two wars. We spend that money in fuel, ammunition, and then rebuilding what we blew up. What a racket, huh?
Well, it's a great racket, and if you're in the war business, you're probably doing pretty well these days. But if you're just a regular schlub out there trying to work for a living and provide for your family, you're hurting. And we know that we can't trust the government statistics that are coming back about unemployment. The official rate is 9.1%. But if you use the metrics that were used back in 1980, we come back with closer to a 23% unemployment rate out in the population. And all of our efforts seem to be misguided. The government no longer serves the people. The government cannot, according to our constitutional system, the government rules by the consent of the governed. If that's changed, we need to be aware of it. And I'm afraid that it either has changed or is changing.
Well, it's they've been doing that for a long time. I mean, one of my favorite things to do 15 years ago is every time a politician got up in public and said something about our great democracy, I'd ask him, when did that happen? What Congress passed? What Congress changed our republic to a democracy? And
just because you get to vote doesn't mean that we're in a democracy. And a democracy in its purest form is mob rule. And hopefully we'll never come to that. But we do have a republic, but a republic is not serving us currently. And
you ran for governor.
Yes, sir, I did. I ran for governor in 2006 on the Republican ticket.
On a Republican ticket.
Yes,
Ron Paul's running for president. He's not getting much support from the media. And he's probably, although he's also a Mason, which brings a few questions to mind. He's been pretty well ignored by the media. What was your experience?
Well, my experience when I was running in the Republican primary, I couldn't get arrested. I mean, I had a complete media blackout against me to where anything I said, anything I did, press releases, speeches I would give, no one, because I couldn't get arrested. That the media did not want to pay attention to me at all. The only things that they published on me were a little bit of negative that they could find on me was I have a cranky ex-wife who's not happy, and they were interviewing her on a daily basis, but they refused to interview me. So I wonder how many guys have had that experience.
I went through something very similar. In 1996. I worked with Charles Collins, who was running on the Republican ticket, first Republican to sign up for the presidential race. But every time Charles got up at the Republican conventions to tell them we could buy back the Federal Reserve and wipe out a $6 trillion debt at the time, That's doubled or more. And they cut his microphones off. Every cameraman on stage pointed their cameras at the ground and took a smoke break while Charles Collins was speaking. How can we vote? What kind of choice do we have in voting if nobody knows that people like you and Charles are running?
Well, Clay, you brought up a really, really good point there, and that is we've got a media in this country that is 96% of the media in this country is owned by a certain religious group. That certain religious group represents 1.7% of the entire population, and they're the Jewish Zionists who own the media, and so they filter what we hear, and that's just the long and the short of it. A radio show like yours is a welcome breath of fresh air where you can actually get an opposing view that's truly opposing, and not the controlled opposition, or the Rush Limbaughs, et cetera, of the world, are nothing more than controlled opposition. They're there to allow people to call up and vent and say, yeah, I'm angry too, but they never go anywhere. They never do anything. But the question is, what do we do? What do we do when our government is illegitimate and does not serve the will of the people? It appears that the elections don't work.
I'm just doing this article. I said that September 11th was the biggest, most spectacular false flag operation in history. It led us into 2 wars, distracted us from a real invasion taking place right now. It gave us an enemy where none existed. No Iraqis were massed on our borders. No Arabs in a cave in Afghanistan flew remote control planes into skyscrapers and caused them to fall down. Yet hundreds of thousands of people of all races and religions have died in the last 10 years in the wars that followed, but it was nothing new. Like 170 million civilians have been murdered by their own governments in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even talking about the soldiers in the wars and all of the.
You're talking about innocent civilians.
Yes.
Going back to the Russian Revolution when the Bolsheviks killed 60 million white Russian Christians.
That's right, and the Gulag Archipelago is a non-fictional account about the great Holocaust of our century, the imprisonment, brutalization, and often murder of tens of millions of innocent Soviet citizens. That was white Christian Soviets, and Solzhenitsyn wrote about it.
I've read the book. I think that Solzhenitsyn did a wonderful job documenting one of the greatest tragedies of the modern age, and that is the Soviet takeover. What people don't realize about the Bolsheviks and the Russian Revolution is that of the 236 Soviet committee on the first Soviet was there, 233 of them were American Jews from the Lower East Side of Manhattan who were funded by the Warburgs. And our banking system invested the money to take down the Tsar.
That's right. That's murdered the Tsar and his family and his dogs.
Everything.
And at the same time, they say this all happened after they failed to get their plan for one world government through. That was called the League of Nations. And 2 countries opposed that. Tsarist Russia and the United States. So they murdered the Tsar and they gave us the Federal Reserve, and we've been victims of this. And it's the banks that are laundering all of the drug money that's coming through. So we're talking about big business, billions if not trillions of dollars.
Clay, let me give you an example. B of A purchased Wachovia during 2008 when Wachovia was going bankrupt. Just Wachovia alone, had laundered $360 billion of drug money for the drug cartels. $360 billion. One bank, Wachovia. And you look at all the rest of them out there, if they each had a similar amount, and we've got 10 big banks, we're talking real money now. That's adult money where I come from. That's in the trillions of dollars that the drug industry is worth. And that's what's funding this. That is what is destroying our country. Not so much the drugs themselves, but the profits from the drugs that are not trackable and not accountable to anyone, anywhere.
That's right. And in this article I'm working on, Mike, I said that 40 years ago, I became a victim of the drug war. And while I was in prison, I wrote a book about the future. I called it science fiction. Yet much of what I wrote about, I've watched come true over the years. The police state I envisioned back then has been foisted on us. You know, after 40 years, my typed manuscript gathering dust in a battered box, I'm finally getting a chance to edit it. And I realize now all I did was alert the people in charge of my knowledge of what their plans were, and I've probably been targeted ever since.
Well, Clay, I think that the best thing we can do is to alert enough people out there so that everyone knows this, because if there's a single guy or a dozen guys, these powers, these dark powers out there can take that person. They can deal with him or you or any of 10, 20, but when you have thousands and thousands upon people out there who know this and who are aware of this and who see through the bullshit, excuse me, the BS, who see through the BS.
No, this is I'm sorry, Mike. Don't mean to interrupt you, but this is the Free American. This is bullshit.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't want to get us in trouble with the FCC by using profanity on air. You understand? So I want to keep you broadcasting. But
if they can get away with it by playing rap music, fuck them. You know.
Well, okay. Anyway, the more people we can make aware of this, so that the more people know what they're doing and can see what's happening, behind the curtain, then they can't stop everybody. And so a few people have got to go out there and stick their head up first so that more people can become knowledgeable and more people can help change this. But brings me to my next question. Let's say we have a multi-trillion-dollar-a-year global drug business that's run by the CIA, hypothetically, okay? I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, but hypothetically, let's just say that there is. What is the use of these proceeds? What are they doing with these proceeds? And I'd like to refer you to a fellow named Richard Dolan, and he's a historian. And what Richard Dolan has done is he's taken the publicly available documents going back to the 1940s, and he's put together a history of programs. And he's found out that there is a lot of repression in the technology business, primarily energy technology and anti-gravity technology, to where his conclusion is that we have developed, the black programs have developed what he's calling a breakaway civilization. That we see UFOs, we see other things, that these are really run and sponsored by the shadow government, and that they have taken U.S. personnel off planet, and that they've got a whole secret society out there that is a civilization that doesn't need us anymore and is leaving us behind. So that's just food for thought.
Well, that's kind of what I wrote about 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I figured you were going that way. That's why I brought Dolan out. But Dolan has documented this extremely well. And any of your listeners out there, I would highly recommend that you either go to YouTube and listen to any of his lectures and or buy his book, because he makes the case for the breakaway civilization, that we have conquered these things, that we have established a zero-point energy technology that no longer requires oil or gas or fossil fuels.
I have said that for years. I've said the reason they want to deny the existence of UFOs is they don't want you to know that we can have lunch on the moon.
Well, they don't want you to have lunch on the moon, but more importantly, they want you to keep buying oil for your car. They want you to keep paying for electricity when you turn on the switch, so you can turn on your lights. When all of that has been conquered, zero-point energy produces it from the fifth dimensional ether, and these technologies are alive and well in working for the shadow government, and we don't have access to them because they have not taken it. They don't think enough of us to include us, and they want to protect their monopoly on the planetary energy business.
And if you build a Pogue carburetor, the two men in black show up and just say, tear it down, take it off, or we kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And and the same thing, or they like Paul Pantone, they put you in an insane asylum for thinking you could run your car on waste oil. So they put you away for 3.5 years.
Well, There's a lot of nasty tricks they can do, and these guys are all about the power, and they want to protect their power. They want to protect their basis of it. They wish to stay in control. These are the masters of the universe, and by God, they're not going to allow any of us lowly peasants to get in their way and interfere with them at all. So we're digressing here, Clay. Let's go back to talking about the more immediate problems we have. And you mentioned the sheriff down in Cochise County, who is Larry Deaver.
Yes.
Who I happen to look at as a very fine individual, a good man with a very difficult job. When I was running for governor, he was very supportive and very helpful to me. And more importantly, he was nice to my kid. And you know, anybody who has a child and someone in a position of authority, a role model like Sheriff Deaver, when they take the time to be nice to your kid, that really touches your heart. And that man won my gratitude for that, and my respect out of how he how kind he was to my son was really important to me.
Okay.
But
I've met him. I've had lunch with him, and that's why I'm personally inviting you to take part, to be one of the speakers, because Larry Deaver is going to be a speaker. I'm going to invite Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and I'm going to invite Paul Babot to speak there, because I think we've really got to do this from a grassroots level. If the federal government is against us, and they've demonstrated that by suing the state for what the voters voted on. This is a direct attack on our whole system, our constitutional system, in my opinion. I'd like to see you speak there. I'd like to be able to this is Veterans Day. This event is centered in Cochise County, and it's being supported by businesses all the way from Douglas to Benson. And I want to point out, I want to try to show people that there is an answer. There is, in other words, if we generate our own power from everything God gave us, and we grow our own foods that aren't genetically modified, or that we don't have to pay somebody to put them in the ground, then we become more free. But they attack. The first thing, this type of system, when it's set up in a country, the first thing they go after is the farmers, and that's what they did with hemp. They made it into a drug so they could control it and charge more for it, and not have to account for anything.
Well, there's another aspect to the hemp problem, and that is at the same time DuPont was introducing their new wonder fiber, nylon.
Yes.
Nylon was much more expensive than hemp. So in order to eliminate and clear the competition, they outlawed hemp, marijuana, etc., and everyone had to buy nylon for their rope instead of using hemp for the rope, which was a much cheaper, more cost-effective solution, because no one was going to spend the extra money to buy this new nylon when they could buy a swell hemp rope for 10% of the price.
Right.
Yeah,
that was documented very well by my friend Jack Hara, who I backed while he was writing The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And Governor Gary Johnson was the governor where I started, with Gary's full knowledge, the militias in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But
one of my business partners is a close friend with Gary Johnson, and I was hoping that his presidential campaign was going to go a little further than it did, but he didn't seem to get the traction he needed. I think Johnson would have been a reasonable man in that office.
Yes, he would, and he would have done exactly what I'm suggesting: legalize all the drugs. The Constitution doesn't give the government the right to tell us what we can grow.
No, it doesn't. And something interesting, the Drug Enforcement Act of 1970, which is what was the omnibus drug bill, that everything in there, this was really primarily driven by the use of LSD at the time. But they threw everything in there but the kitchen sink, that gave the DEA complete authority over what drugs are legal and what drugs are illegal. And this is in complete violation of the constitutional principle that the states have the right to determine